Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Starts and Grafts. I'm really excited for this episode as I'm joined by a very old friend. Before we get started, I think it's worth providing a little bit of context to the conversation. A bit about me. My earliest memories of performing were taking part in musicals and plays as a child, and it's a hobby that I've continued to do ever since. I'm pleased that my guest this week is someone I spent a lot of time with performing on the amateur theatre scene in Bolton. She then went on to train at Mount Academy of Theatre Arts and more recently has appeared in the Les Mis UK and International Tour. Just a heads up, in the first few minutes the sound quality isn't amazing but it picks up very quickly. Do bear with us as it is a fantastic conversation. If there are any potential sponsors out there, don't hesitate to get in touch as we will accept any freebies thrown our way. Tangent over, let's get going. Rebecca Bolton, welcome to Starts and Grafts. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thank you. So obviously we're recording this on the first day of the new lockdown and bonfire night, which is not the best choice from me, but let's see how we get on. Apologies if you hear any fireworks going off in the background. How are you feeling about the month ahead?
Do you know what? I think we all saw it coming, didn't we? It's not ideal. To be honest, I think I'd rather it than all of this. You're in tier 3, now you're in tier 2, and then Bolton was in a lockdown for a while. So to be honest, I think we just need to all make a decision, and we have.
Yeah.
So
obviously you're recording this from back in our native Bolton, which has just had a bit of a hellish time throughout the whole lockdown. But yeah, I completely agree, to be honest. I think it's better in a way that we're all in a similar position. We're all moving forward as a country together. We'll just have to see what happens when the 2nd of December comes and where we go on from there.
Yeah, it's a big question mark, isn't it? But we will see.
We will see. So let's get down to it. Let's find a little bit more about you, Becky. I'm really looking forward to kind of having a chat, having a bit of a catch up, finding out what you've been up to, and maybe even a little bit of a reminisce about those good old days. So you joined Les Mis, the cast of Les Mis, in 2019.
I did.
Which role were you playing when you was in the show?
So I was in the ensemble or the chorus.
Okay.
I was in a cast. There was 33 of us on stage.
Okay.
And I also was a cover to one of the leading roles, Cosette. So I was second cover. So whenever she went off, I would step into her shoes and play the role for her.
So you had a few chances at being kind of a leading lady.
I didn't really, actually.
Oh, okay.
We only got a few months into it, so I didn't get my shot. I had a full dress rehearsal. I had my moment to put on my costumes and feel like a princess for a day. But I never got to do it in front of an audience because COVID got there before I got chance. So hopefully when we reopen, I'll get that chance to do it in front of an audience.
That must have been so frustrating.
It was, but I was on stage every night having an absolute ball. The good thing about Les Mis is you're so busy in the chorus.
Yeah, so what other roles did you play then? Because obviously, for anyone that knows the show, there's so much going on throughout it. What other little characters did you play?
I think I figured this out while we were in rehearsals. I think I played around like 11 or 12 different characters during the show. Like it's mad. In the first 10 minutes, we all change characters about 4 times because it spans someone's whole life.
Sure.
He goes through so much and he travels so much. There's so many different places and scenes. So mainly I was a beggar woman, a person of the poor, and it's all, if you don't know the show, it suits me really well. And my actual title, I'll give you my title.
Go for it.
It was Waitress / Whore 2.
What a treat. So you weren't even the top whore, you weren't even the leader of the whores.
I wasn't top whore. No, I was not lead whore.
Maybe one day when the tour reopens, maybe you'll get that promotion that you've been waiting for. How much of the tour had you completed then before lockdown had hit?
So we started October 2019. That's when we started rehearsals, and then we opened November. So we opened November, and then we got shut mid-March. So I'd done 3 venues out of 11, and done about 2-3 months.
Because obviously it was a tour. Where had you been performing for it?
Yeah, so we were doing all the major UK venues, really. So I started in Southampton at the Mayflower. And then we went to Cardiff over Christmas for 6 weeks at the Millennium Centre. That was amazing. And then we actually went to Switzerland in January. We did 5 weeks in Zurich.
Amazing.
I'd never been to Switzerland before either. That was great. And then we were in Norwich when we got shut. We were in our second week in Norwich when we got closed down.
A slight difference to Switzerland, but an amazing opportunity nonetheless.
I know, yeah, it was a bit of a drop down after the Swiss Alps to the Norwich market.
What was it like? Was it mainly a Swiss audience that you had watching every night?
It was it was fully Swiss audience, and we had Swiss crew out there as well. So that was a learning curve because we were only just getting to grips with the show. We'd only been doing it a couple of months, and then we had to teach it to people who didn't know the language. So that was interesting. And there are different cultures out there. Like do you know how you'd have like a program at a show? They don't do programs over there. They don't care.
Sure,
In England, there's a big stage door culture when the actors come out at the end of the show. There's loads of people there for autographs.
Yeah.
They don't care in Switzerland. They don't care who you are. That's not a thing at all. So it's a really different vibe, and they're not very applaudy and whoopy and cheery. They're very quiet.
Sure, we're quite over the top, I think, aren't we? We like to think that we're not, but I think we are.
In England, we'd have standing ovations every night, cheering, whooping.
Yeah.
But then it was like silence in Switzerland. And we were all, on the opening night, we were like, are we doing really badly? Is this awful? What's going on?
Did you have more international venues lined up then?
We only had one other one. We had Dublin as well, which is
Okay.
about as international as it got. And the rest were just major cities, really. We had Bristol, Birmingham left, Glasgow, all big places like that.
So obviously... Yeah, so I was going to say, this was your professional debut, wasn't it?
It was.
Did your friends and family get to see it? Because you didn't make it up to Salford, which is the nearest place.
Yeah, that was going to be home, and that was supposed to be in May. A couple of my family did. My mum and dad came down on opening night in Southampton.
Lovely.
And my auntie, but like my brother couldn't make it. He had a baby on my opening night.
Oh wow. Was that the due date? How did your parents even plan to kind of split their time?
The due date was end of November, and this was like November 18th. So they were like, yeah, we can come down, it's fine. And then they were travelling down on the Sunday night. We opened on the Monday. And as they were travelling down, my brother called me and said, Rachel's in labour. And I thought, oh God, my parents are coming down and their first grandchild's been born. Oh dear.
That's always going to be a story though, isn't it,
Absolutely.
to be fair?
He absolutely stole my thunder.
I love that. So obviously it's a show that I remember as children, like we performed when we were younger, didn't we? And then I got to watch you in it. And I remember when we performed it at our local Amdrome, getting told that we were going to do it.
Yeah.
I remember everyone's faces at the age of like 15 and 16, everyone being so excited. So then what was it like when you then got told that it was going to be your professional debut? Do you remember getting that phone call?
Oh, I remember that phone call, yeah. I had actually been waiting a long time for that phone call. So everyone thinks that these things just happen fluky and you do an audition and you get that phone call straight away, whereas that didn't happen. This was my third time auditioning for the show.
All right, okay.
So I'd done 2 previous versions of it in the world, auditions, and hadn't got it. So this was my third time. I'd done 4 auditions. And then I waited 6 weeks for my phone call, and I knew that I was in the running for it, and I knew that they liked me and that they wanted me to do it, but they were just figuring out all the logistics. So I was sat by my phone for 6 weeks just sweating. And I remember the day I was in Amsterdam on holiday, and I was with a friend. I wasn't with my family or anything. And then I got the phone call and I was sat by a river in Amsterdam having a coffee, and my agent said to me, what could be the best news that you'd get today? And I said, is it that I'm going to be in Les Mis? And he said, yeah, you are. And I just sobbed on this river in Amsterdam, like, just crying my eyes out.
I bet that was so surreal. Did you then obviously get straight on the phone to your parents?
It's funny actually, I got straight on the phone to my mum and I was sobbing down the phone, and obviously all she could hear was me crying, and I was in a foreign country, so she was like, Rebecca, what's wrong, what's happened? she thought I was getting kidnapped, and I was like, I'm in Les Mis, and she went, oh thank God, I thought you were being kidnapped. She didn't even care about the fact that I was in the show. I was like, I thought you were dying.
I remember seeing that you'd put the news on Facebook, I think, or on Instagram, and I was just like, of course. Of course.
I know, I did it enough as a kid. I think I did, how many amateur productions of Les Mis did I do? 4?
I was going to say, is what parts haven't you actually played in Les Mis?
The males, actually.
The men. Who knows what a post-lockdown Les Mis could bring then?
No, it's 2020. Come on, let's do it.
To be fair, I'm sure a lot of people would pay quite good money to see that. Obviously, the show's been cancelled. Well, postponed because of the pandemic?
Postponed until further notice.
Okay, that's the line that we're going with, postponed until further notice. How has life changed for you over lockdown? What have you been up to?
Oh, it's been a journey. So I've moved back in with my mum and dad. I'm back in Bolton.
Okay.
I lived in London before I did the show and gave up that flat to go on tour because I didn't want to be paying rent and being away. So I came back here because I was virtually homeless. The beginning of lockdown, I kind of chilled for a few weeks actually. My parents were on furlough. We sat in the garden and it felt like a bit of a holiday really, didn't it, when it was sunny? And
That must have been so nice, obviously, because you'd had such a busy schedule for a while.
And yeah, for a few weeks it was nice, but I'm very much a can't sit down, very skittish kind of person. So I think I lasted 2 weeks before I was like, I'm going insane. So I got a job at Tesco for a while when everything was still shut. There was nothing open except supermarkets.
Like so many other people that were actors did the same thing, didn't they?
Oh yeah, there's so many people. I think a couple of people have now gone viral with silly supermarket videos of them prancing down the aisles.
Yeah, kickball change at the self-checkout and stuff.
Yeah, mine was night shifts pulling a trolley around like, I'm gonna die. That was more my vibe. But then I broke my ankle in the summer, so then had to stop working at Tesco.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was funny. I broke my ankle on a walk. Exercise is bad for you, guys. Don't do it.
One lesson learned from lockdown.
I know, yeah, never again, never again. Since then, I was working at a restaurant full time, but obviously this week that's stopped.
As of today,
Yeah, as of today. And then I've also been teaching.
Okay.
Is what I've been doing in lockdown, which I never thought I'd do. I've always been like, no, I can't teach. I don't like kids. Don't want to do it. And an opportunity came up with a friend through theatre. She's a singing teacher, and she remembered me from Amdrome and said, I've got a job at a kids' theatre school. Would you do it once a week? And I thought, oh, do you know what? I will.
Oh, brilliant.
I'll give it a go. And I absolutely love it. It's so much fun.
How have you found that the kids have been adapting? Are you teaching face-to-face in person?
I was teaching face-to-face, and the odd child would be isolating, so we'd have to do Zoom or whatever. But now, because of this current lockdown, we're going on to Zoom this week. So it's going to be another learning curve again to try and teach singing over a computer. It will be really bizarre. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's going to be interesting.
That's the thing, though. Have you done any Zoom rehearsals or anything? Because that's what everyone's had to adapt to, isn't it, all this time?
Yeah, I mean, I've not done anything because, as I say, with the show being shut, I've not really had much theatre involvement at all in the past 7-8 months. But people have, and it is so bizarre. I did a couple of Zoom lessons, as I say, while the kids were isolating, and it's just so difficult. Like, you've got the sound on and it doesn't quite work, and then someone's internet goes, and
you'll love this. I did a Zoom play, so I'd got involved in a local Amdrome when I'd moved down here, and it's really good and everyone's really enthusiastic. And a few weeks, it was actually quite a while into lockdown. Actually, they'd decided to start putting on Zoom plays. So I got this message saying, "Oh, we need someone to read this part in Calendar Girls." Do you know?
Oh,
you know
I do know Calendar Girls, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if it's because they wanted someone with a generic northern accent for a bit of authenticity or what. But anyway,
yeah.
So it got to the performance. We'd done the read through and whatnot, and it got to the end of the first act, and everyone's screens went black. This was the calendar scene. And then one by one, these screens started to appear with all these middle-aged women naked on the camera. We had women with iced buns, kind of in their kitchen with their bits hiding behind them. We had one woman with a guitar, one with a carol book. It was the most insane lockdown experience I think I could possibly have had. And but you know what, I just
love the effort.
Like, I really rate that commitment that people have had, even if it's been professionally or from like an Amdrome perspective. I just think it's incredible that people have found ways to adapt and do new things and keep going, because we don't know how long realistically it is before people are going to be able to do big performances again.
It's so true, and I know that people in London have been trying to get shows back up and running, and a friend of mine was doing a show at the Hope Mill, which sadly last night had its opening and closing night because of the lockdown. They've had to shut. People have done so much, and it baffles me how stupidly creative people are.
It's insane, isn't it? And I think it's really inspiring. And one thing that we are doing kind of alongside the podcast, we're using our social media channels to get in touch with artists from all sorts of backgrounds and for them to give advice to people that are considering creative careers but a little bit unsure. So I just want to share this piece of advice with you that we got from Ty Jeffries. He also performs as Miss Hope Springs. He's a drag performer. And the quote that we got from them is, "Keep honing your craft so that when the time comes, you have finessed that audition piece, perfected that song, nailed that dance number, and found every laugh in that comedy routine. Once the pause button is pressed, take the time to polish your craft. And what I think's so nice about that is the idea that it is just a pause button.
Yeah, we need to think like that. I'm an insanely positive person. I always think that things are going to work out swimmingly for everyone. And maybe that's naive. Think about what you will, but that's my mindset. So when everyone says, "Oh, theatre's doomed," I refuse to believe that, because we're just too determined as people, and creative people will never be told that they can't.
Exactly.
I have every faith that it will. It's scary when you see people trying and doors get shut. And we had a meeting with the Les Mis team the other night, and we were all of us asking questions. What's the plan? And they were saying, we can't make a plan. There is no plan. We have no idea what's going to happen, and we can't guess with COVID. It's not one of those things you can predict.
1 minute we seem to be on track, and then the next minute everything's back up in the air again.
Yeah.
And you just can't plan anything.
No.
And I think it's such a shame, especially when I remember at the start of lockdown, theatre was something that so many of us were turning to, and people were actually turning to it for the first time with things like National Theatre at Home, and all the different, I think Andrew Lloyd Webber released loads of recorded shows that everyone could watch. Yeah.
Hamilton went on Disney Plus. That was huge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Hamilton on Disney Plus, which everyone was talking about, whether they'd even considered listening to something like Hamilton before.
Well, exactly. And do you know what? It's interesting because I have always been on the side of theatre is to be live, and there's a reason we do it live, and recordings isn't what it's all about. There's a reason we do it live. There's a reason we stage it. It's to give people that once in a lifetime experience. It's never going to be like that again.
Yeah.
But it was a friend of mine who turned to me and was like, well, instead of stopping people from watching theatre, it's going to open so many people to go, do you know what, when the theatre's open, I'm going to go see that. Because I was very jaded about everything going online. I thought, no, we need people to be going into theatres. It was my friend who said, no, this will bring them in. This will bring even more people, because our generation don't go to the theatre. It's quite an old-fashioned thing to do, I suppose, to pop out for an evening of theatre. Hopefully it will open those doors and go, oh, do you know what? I do want to see a show in the West End when they open. I want to go and see what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think it's been so nice as well to see lots of regional theatres doing some really positive things. So obviously, growing up as children, our local theatre was the Octagon, and I've seen that throughout lockdown they've done loads of brilliant things for aspiring young writers and their elders group that they have and things like that, and even places like the Royal Exchange. And I just hope it makes people realise that maybe I can't travel down to London all the time to go and watch a show, but there's actually a lot going on my doorstep that I can tune in with and go and check out.
And that's the thing I'm so proud of with doing a tour. It was, you'd speak to people after it in Norwich and Southampton, and these people would go, I'd never get a chance to go to London, it's too expensive, or we can't get there and stay overnight because we work, or whatever the reasons were. But when you take a show to people out in the outskirts, and they very rarely see things like that, and then they watch our show and sit there sobbing and go, it was incredible, and you go, oh, this is so much better than anything else, because you're taking it to people who wouldn't normally get it. And that's what the regional theatres do. And I would back them till the cows come home, like the Hope Mill, like Royal Exchange. We've got to help those smaller regional theatres.
I really, really hope that it gets to come back to the Lowry, just because I know the swarms of people that will come to watch you in it. It'll be like some sort of homecoming. It'll be ridiculous.
Oh, my mum had already ordered a coach. She was ready.
Rebecca Bolton from Bolton taking everyone over to Salford for a local performance. But I think what you said was really interesting. You said that obviously theatre people are so resilient.
Oh, yeah.
And people across the arts really are kind of known for always juggling something else alongside their career in order to have some sort of financial stability, or some sort of framework that allows them to pursue creative opportunities. So that kind of takes us to the word grafts, which is in the title of the podcast. So just wondering, what are some of you mentioned some of the jobs you've had during lockdown, but prior to that, what are some of the other jobs that you've had over the years?
I mean, my friend at Les Mis would always make fun of me and say, have you had every job on the planet? Because I've just been working since I was 15, because I'm a Boltonian. We don't have a lot of money, and to go down to London and train was very expensive. So I started working when I was about 15. I worked in a bakery. And then after that, I moved over to restaurants. I've done loads of hospitality.
When you say bakery, do you mean a pie shop?
I mean Greenhouse's pie shop. Don't call me out like that.
I'm not calling you out on that. I'm actually using this moment now to educate people. If anybody doesn't know what greenhouses is,
Oh,
take a moment to Google it because it is top notch. There's no better place to get a butter pie.
and Greg's. Oh, a butter pie.
See, I didn't want to call out Greg's like
Oh
that.
no, I've done it.
You brought a lawsuit onto my doorstep. Cheers for that.
Do not start with me. I will argue with anyone. They're better. So yeah, that was my first job in a little pie shop.
In a lovely yellow and was it what colour's the uniform there?
Green and orange. Yep, lovely.
Very nice.
Beautiful. It was stunning. And all the people from school would come in as well. So that was a highlight. So yeah, then I did a lot of hospitality work, loads of restaurants, and some of the more weirder things I've done, I suppose. I've worked in a Turkish coffee house.
Oh, really? In London?
Yeah, in London. I was a typist while I was in London as well, mainly in my year after graduating. I lived in London for a year just auditioning, and I would get sent audio files, mainly from like court cases and highly confidential things, and I would transcribe them at home and write out everything that was said. So yeah, that was interesting. There were some eye-opening things I learned.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet you heard some pretty
graphic and scary things, yeah. So you just kind of have to be like, dum-da-dum, I'm just going to type this and try not to listen too much to what they're saying. So yeah, that was another job I had. I've worked at Wembley for their gigs, just pulling pints and serving food. And I've been a face painter. That's another thing I've done.
What, at children's parties or?
Children's parties, dressed as Princess Unicorn. That was me.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, she's got many hats as this girl.
She's got many hats. She's not just Waitress and Whore 2 or whatever it was.
She's so much more than that.
I bet your acting profile on your spotlight has an array of different talents.
Oh, when it says other skills, I'm like, oh, give me a moment.
Love it. That's brilliant.
But yeah, you've got to. That's the thing. I was working 2, sometimes 3 jobs in London because I think people hear the term actor and they think, oh, you're on Corrie and you're earning a hefty sum, and that's not the life, and that's very, very rare that you get to that point. And like I see people who are in their 30s and 40s and still working part-time in the local pub because they just adore theatre and they will do what it takes to make it work.
Am I right in thinking that a lot of people, obviously, that are performers and actors have other more flexible jobs so that they can go to that last-minute audition that they get called for kind of the day of or a few days before?
Absolutely. That can be a struggle because obviously a lot of other jobs don't have the flexibility that we do, and I struggled with that with a few places. You find your good employers who are really understanding and go, yeah, head off to that audition, we'll see you in an hour. Yeah, you can be a couple of hours late to your shift, that's great, but not everyone's like that and they don't get it. It is a real struggle to find people who are that flexible. It's a juggling match, and that's why a lot of people do things from home or they do another self-employed thing so that they can do it on their own time. But
yeah,
it's really hard, and I can see why some people do just go, I'm going to stop this now, because to keep juggling those balls is not an easy feat, especially when something like a global pandemic comes along.
Completely understandably. So you were saying because of the pandemic, obviously you're back home in Bolton now.
I know.
Have you got any plans to move back down to London? I don't, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like there's quite a London-centric feel with theatre and auditions and things like that. Is that true, or?
Sometimes it is. It is the hub, I guess, of live theatre in the UK. And that's why I struggled with coming home. I always thought that once I left Bolton, I would never come back and that would be it, and I was off. And London is really hard. If you're not doing what you love, I was working 60, sometimes 70 hours a week at a gin distillery and barely making my rent. That was another job I had. That was my favourite. I got drunk for a living. But I was working like 60 to 70 hours, running around doing auditions. This was back in 2018 and 19. And I thought, I am barely scraping rent. I've got nothing to show for all the work I'm doing because it's flying out the window. And I sat down with my parents and thought, how do I make this work? And I made the decision to go back to Manchester. And for a long while, I was like, I'm making a terrible choice. This is all going to go wrong. I'm never going to be an actor. And within a month, I'd got Les Mis. So it does just go to show that you don't have to be there. Because I still have my agent. I still have my London-based agent, who's wonderful. And I had an audition about 3 weeks ago now. That was my first in over a year, which was really bizarre. And I got on the train down to London and I came back that night and it was miles cheaper than paying sky high for rent.
It's so nice that you've just shared that, because that's such a positive experience that some people may not be aware of, that you can still potentially live out of London and still get those opportunities. Like you said, within a month of moving back, you'd got Les Mis, and you've still managed to make it all work in the meantime.
Absolutely. And people do think it's the be all and end all. And I get that because it's so beautiful and all the big theatres are there and all the big wigs are there. But like you said, there's so many regional theatres, there's so many regional drama schools.
Yeah.
And I always thought getting down to drama school had to be in London and that's where it had to be. And then I meet people on Les Mis who were accountants for 5 years and then decided to do theatre, you know? Like there's so many avenues you can get into this and London isn't the be all and end all. It's beautiful and I love it. And I know that one day I will end up back there and I hope to make that my home when theatre's more feasible. But for now, it's not the be all and end all. And Northerners win.
Yeah, I think, it's nice though when you hear examples of people that are just starting out in their careers and doing that. But then there's lots of, I know, for example, Maxine Peake famously still lives in Salford and she does so much. I mean, she's someone that's constantly on our TVs, constantly in the theatre. And you think, well, it works for her and it must work. There must be so many people out there actually that live up and down the country and still manage to make it work.
Yeah, there is. There's so many ways of doing it. And I think all those old ideas of, oh, well, I'm an actor, so I can't ever have a family because it's not the right kind of lifestyle and I can't have a home because I'm self-employed. And I mean, that's kind of true because mortgages are expensive. But all those, because I always thought, oh, well, I won't be able to settle down and have kids until I'm in my late 30s.
Yeah.
Those ideas are changing now. And there's, like, I don't know if you heard a couple of years ago in 42nd Street, the leading lady was pregnant. So instead of giving her understudies, there was just 2 women who shared the role. So one woman did 3 nights a week so she could go home to her baby, and then another woman did another 3 nights a week. People are changing things, and that, it gives me hope.
It just takes trendsetters like that, doesn't it, to make things the norm, and then people start to cotton on that that's a better play, that's a better kind of theatre world to be operating in.
It's so easy to go, well, theatre's my life, and I'll throw everything else away for it, but it's not the case. And it was actually a guy in my graduation, he made a speech and he said, he's called Eddie Marson. He was our speech, the doctor at our graduation, and he said, he was like, have the life, have the babies, have the husbands and wives, and have your life, because theatre will always be there, but if you pin all your hopes onto it, it is so fragile and it is so unsure that something like a little virus can shut the entire system down. So it was a really interesting way of looking at it.
How interesting that was at your graduation, and that's kind of where you've all completed your training and you're about to be released into the world of performance. And then he's just kind of gone, just hold on a second, think about your lives first. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's amazing that you got the opportunity to hear that just before being released into the world.
You do, and you go, oh, this is my life. And it's like, no, life is life. And theatre is, and that's the thing I struggled with a lot, actually, because theatre and performing has always been my hobby. Everyone has always said, oh, it must be so great to do your job because you're just doing what you love every day. And I'd say, yeah, true. But the problem with having your hobby as your job is that it means so much more, which means it hurts so much more when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like if I don't get that audition, as much as I'd love to walk out and go, oh well, and just walk away, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And it cuts so much deeper. So it can consume your whole life, and you have to remember at the end of the day, this is my job, this is my career. And you've got to strike that balance between going, yeah, I love what I do, it's the best thing in the world, but also going, I need my life as well. And if it soaks up everything, it's just going to be so unhealthy.
I think that's what you've just said is so spot on. So you was mentioning, though, you was talking about theatre being your hobby. So we've discussed the Grafts part of the podcast.
Yeah.
So let's discuss the starts.
Oh.
Ella, our producer, is giving me the lamest look. She's just shaking her head because I said that.
Shut up.
Can you remember your earliest memories of performing?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this and I can't. I started performing, I started dance lessons when I was about 4. And then I started into amateur theatre groups not long after that. I think I was about 5, maybe 6 when I did my very first show.
And what was that again?
It was The Sound of Music at St Philip's Church Hall, which I believe you know quite well.
Yes. I think I actually came and watched that. I think I spent just as much of my early years watching you and stuff than I did actually performing myself.
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, I did a lot. And obviously I was 4 years old when I started, so I don't remember life not having theatre in it, as cheesy as that sounds. My eldest brother was in theatre. My dad plays guitar. My other brother played the drums for a while. So it was a very musical house.
Yeah.
Always music on. So I don't remember my life without it, and I can't imagine my life without it, really, which is why COVID has been so weird, because I've had to find other things. But yeah, I was in theatre so much. I always joke that I didn't really have a childhood, but that's a lie. My childhood was in theatre groups and going to rehearsals and going to dance classes.
But we were so lucky. Do you not think? I think we were so lucky living where we live. I don't know if everyone that's listening is from Bolton or what, but Bolton has such a weirdly huge network of amateur theatre groups, whether it's
It's incredible.
musicals or plays or pantomimes, and there's so many people that just absolutely love it. It's insane, isn't it?
I think Bolton and Greater Manchester in general, there was just so huge. And I even found in London, I struggled to find. I know you mentioned earlier that you'd found an Amdrome group, and I was like, oh wow, because
Yeah, yeah.
I never saw any posters for the local production of Thoroughly Modern Millie or something. There was none of that. Whereas that's all we grew up with, and even we were in what, one or two societies max. Like there was so many. Like,
But it was funny because it was a lady who used to run our amateur groups as a child minor
oh yeah,
who actually recommended the Amdram group down here for me.
oh really?
So it's really weird that even though I've managed to continue doing it down here, it's through a connection back home that's allowed me to do that. But we were so lucky because there was such a nice community aspect of it. Like you said, you had siblings that took part in it.
Mm.
Your dad was doing front of house. I think your mum did costumes alongside my grandma at one point.
Yes. Oh my
And
god.
my grandma was a tea lady. That got her out the house once a week to be a tea lady, and that was her involved, and that still felt like a contribution from her. There's such a community to it.
We had a great generation of it as well. There were so many kids around our age. Like that was my social life. Those were my friends. And even though yes, we were going and rehearsing and practicing and all that,
Yeah.
like you say, it was such a community effort. And I remember even when I was really little, we'd go on theatre holidays and we'd go to Blackpool for the weekend and we'd all take over this B&B in Blackpool and we'd go ice skating all together because it just brought this community of like-minded people together.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing with me in school and high school. I had friends, but people didn't really get me. They'd be like, oh, come on, do you want to come to this sleepover or whatever? And I'd be like, oh, I can't. I've got such and such thing, or I'm dancing, or I've got my singing exam this weekend. And they're like, what? They just didn't quite get it. And then I'd go to my theatre groups and it would all be this huge group of like-minded people. And it was just so easy and so effortless.
For those of us that knew you quite well and were mingling and mixing with you outside of school, for me anyway, there was never a shadow of a doubt that you were going to end up being a performer and you were going to end up being professionally on the stage. Has that always felt the case for you, or have you ever kind of questioned it at any points?
Do you know what? I was very lucky that I never had that, what am I going to do with my life? It was never even a question, really. I always said, oh, well, I'm going to perform. And there was never a doubt in my mind. I think just from doing it all the time, and I didn't have other hobbies. It's funny when people go, oh, should we go on a bike ride? It's like, well, I can't ride a bike. I can't swim. I didn't do those things. My life was so
Seriously?
consumed. Yeah, I can't swim. Don't bring it up again.
But you can you can do a mean tap dance.
Oh, I can do a mean hot shuffle step. I never did those things, and it was always just, I'm going to perform. And I remember choosing my GCSEs. I remember my maths teacher actually saying, well, why don't you take further maths? I said, well, I want to be an actor. And they were like, an actor? But you're so good at maths. And I was like, that's not, but why? Just because I'm good at it, I don't enjoy it. It doesn't thrill me in any way. And nothing else gave me that buzz that live performing did. So I always knew, and I was lucky that I had my eldest brother who was doing it, so I could see the progression and I could see the steps. I think if I didn't have him, it would have been harder because I wouldn't have known, okay, at sixth form, what do I do? Where do I go? And I found a place to do a BTEC and MT. And
because obviously as you were making those decisions, your brother was performing as a professional, and you always had that kind of spurring you on, I suppose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just copied him, really. I just copied everything he did. I was like, well, he's doing, I want to do that. So I was very lucky that I knew what I wanted to do and I had someone in front of me doing it. So I could see the progression, and it was, I don't want to say easy because it wasn't easy.
But did it seem seamless? Did it seem like it was just a natural progression? It was the next step that you were always going to take?
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. And even at 9 years old, I said, right, I'm going to go to sixth form, I'm going to do musical theatre, and then I'm going to go to London and I'm going to do drama school. And it was never a question. I knew the progression I was going to take. And I've been very lucky that it's worked out that way as well. But yeah, there was never a shadow of doubt in my mind. And I do feel lucky for that, because I do see people who are my age at 23 still not knowing. And
Yeah,
that's okay.
that's what I was going to ask. Because obviously, like you were saying, at 16,
Mm.
you decided you were going to leave school and your further education was going to be
Theatre,
studying
yeah.
musical theatre. You know, at 16, that's for some people, that would be a really big commitment. I was just going to ask what you would potentially suggest as advice for anyone who's considering pursuing maybe a creative arts subject, is a little bit unsure right now because of what's happening within the world.
It is a scary time, and I get it. And I did put all my eggs in one basket. If this didn't work and someone said to me, you can't be a performer tomorrow, I would be a bit up the creek with no paddle, because I haven't got any other qualifications, and I'd find something to do, but I may have to go back to uni because my degree's in musical theatre. I'm very much a one-track mind. So when people from theatre groups and stuff have messaged me and said, well, what do you think I should do? I've always said to people, you've got to love it with your whole heart, and you've got to be so sure of it, because one, it's not going to be easy, and two, it's not going to be a certainty. Nothing is guaranteed. So you've got to have nerves of steel and just love it to its core, because if you don't, you're going to fall out of love with it very, very quickly. So people who want to do drama at A-level, go do it. Great. Like, it's an A-level choice, and it's going to help you in so many other avenues as well. It's going to give you confidence, public speaking, how to make speeches, how to talk in a boardroom. And there's so much that theatre can give you that isn't just, okay, well, you have to be on the stage. There's so many more avenues.
I think that's something that I've discussed quite a lot, because my degree was in English, literature and theatre, and it was never a performance-based degree as such. It was quite theoretical, but there was never any, these are the other jobs in the arts that you can go into. You know, behind every show, there's a team of people trying to make it accessible and engage with the community. There's a group of people trying to raise money for it. There's also a group of people putting together incredible artwork to sell the show. And then all your tech team. And there was never an emphasis on that.
To be honest, I don't think I realised that until actually doing it and going, right, I'm going on tour, there's 30 of us in the cast and there's a crew, and I didn't think about how many people that entails. And like you say, you think about, oh, I love theatre, okay, well, I have to be an actor. Like, well, no, you don't have to. Like you say, there's so many avenues, and even I've found jobs in the theatre that I've gone, oh my god, that'd be fun. The wiggies who put all of our wigs on, and costume and makeup. We had one guy who was just in charge of our merchandise. There was so many people. I think on our tour there was 33 cast and over 60 touring crew.
Wow.
And that's people who weren't on stage, and that's the people who toured,
Yeah.
not the people who stayed in London and did bits there. There's more of them. There was just so many people involved. So yeah, being on our side of the curtain isn't the only thing.
And you think of all the people that went on tour with you, for example, all the tech people that when you guys have done your final bow at a venue, you kind of do whatever you do after that, and they've got to de-rig the whole thing, move the whole set.
When we had a get-in, there's called Get In and Get Out, and with a show especially like Les Mis, it's massive. It would take them 2 days. And they would go through the night. So we'd finish at 11 o'clock on Saturday, and that's when some of them would turn up, and you'd see them walking in while we were getting our makeup off. They'd be like, oh yeah, here we go, night shift. And they would pull the entire thing out. We had 14 Arctic trucks that took our show on tour.
14?
Yeah, it's huge. And they would pack all that up and then drive it on to the next city and then get it back up again. And we did nothing compared to them. And we'd complain if they said, can we have an extra rehearsal? We'd be like, oh, this is so difficult.
Divas.
And they hadn't slept for 2 days. So they're amazing. The crew are just, they make the show. And you don't realise that until you see it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that during this time, I know there's been lots of things about freelancers and stuff, and we need to remember that also these people have been affected. I mean, there was that beautiful campaign where all the theatres lit up in solidarity with the arts.
Into red.
Yeah, which was really nice. You know, it's your tech people that do that and ensure that can happen.
That is a big thing to remember for anyone going into the arts, that there's so many avenues and there's so many ways that you can do what you love and be creative. That doesn't necessarily mean hopping on a train to London and tapping on a stage. Like, that's not the be all and end all.
Something again that I'm trying to kind of get across from the podcast and find out from my guests, because we're having a range of people from different backgrounds on, is, you know, I'm going to give you the chance to talk about or just give a shout out to a couple of people, maybe 3 people that have given you the opportunities or that have really spurred you on to get you to where you are now.
3, oh god. There's so many people that genuinely are my cheerleaders. And as I've already spoken about, my brother is one. He passed away 2 years ago, my brother, from a very sudden illness. But before that, he was an actor, and it was only really when he passed that I realised if he hadn't have decided when he was at primary school that he wanted to be in the local production of Oliver, I wouldn't be doing this. My parents weren't really musical theatre. They I think they went to watch Phantom of the Opera on a date once, and that was that, and that was it. And they didn't really get it. And my dad's like heavy metal rock, that's his thing, and my mum did gymnastics, so they just had no idea. And it was him who was like, I want to be in this show, Mum. And my mum was like, oh, well, really? I don't think so. I think that's for people who want to be actors. And he was like, no, I want to try it. So she said, okay. And then off we went. And then that was our lives.
And who knew what that would propel to then happen?
As I said earlier, he went on and did it. He worked at Disneyland. He was in the West End. He was on tours. But also he had his own rock band. He was a really good photographer. He did my first headshots. He created his own app for touring performers. He did so much. So I idolised him way before he passed as well, but I idolise him even more now. And I do feel like I'm doing it for both of us now.
Daniel always struck me as someone that was incredibly dedicated. I remember my first show, I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and it was a production of The King and I, in which your brother played the king.
Yeah.
And at the time, I remember he'd shaved his head at 15. He'd shaved his head so he could take on this role of the king. And at the time, we were 6 or 7, so that's, or whatever, and that was just what was happening. But then as I got older, I realised that he would have then gone into high school every day.
You know what? There's a story with that. So he said, I want to shave my head, Mum. And my mum was like, we can literally get you some tights and stick them on your head. Like, it's fine. And he said, no, I'm shaving my head. So he went into Rivington, our high school, with his little beanie on, and someone pulled it off and was like, oh my God, he's bald. And Daniel was one of those people, if you laughed at him, he'd laugh with you.
Yeah.
He's the coolest guy in the world. But my mum had parents ringing her up saying, I'm just calling to check about Daniel. The kids came home today saying he'd lost his hair. Is he okay? And my mum was like, no, everything's fine. It's just for a show. And she was thinking, oh God, I should never have let him shave his head.
It just shows the dedication.
Oh yeah, that was the kind of person. So yeah, definitely Daniel. And I even put that in the programme of Les Mis, but it's true that every show I do now, I feel like I'm not only doing it for me, I'm doing it for the both of us, because he passed at 28 and he should have done plenty more shows.
And he was doing so well in his career at the time, wasn't he?
So well, yeah, he was in the West End. I forgot to mention that. He was in the West End and it did so much. But as well as Daniel, it sounds cheesy. I feel like I'm doing like my Oscar speech. One day I'm going to write this down.
A premature Oscar speech, that's fine. At least it's practiced and rehearsed.
You've had one job, hun, relax. I think my agent has been amazing over the past few years. I kind of feared agents. I was like, oh God, if you don't get a job, then you don't pay them and they're going to sack you. And he's just the coolest guy and so understanding. And with everything that went on family-wise, he was absolute soldier. And he's fought for jobs for me, and he's amazing. And then the last one, I'm cheating because it'd probably be my parents. They genuinely, I think, have more faith in me and my career than I do. Because when I'd be like, it's really hard, I don't want to do it anymore, my mum and dad would be the ones going, relax, you can do it. And we were never really mushy, soppy people, but I look back now and think the amount of money they spent, and we didn't have a lot.
Time.
And the driving me, like they still drive me around because I haven't learned to drive. the amount of driving me to rehearsals every night, and I mean every single night, get me to dance lessons and go through exams. And when I said, oh, I'm going to give up all of my academics and go and be a dancer mom, she was like, okay, yeah, fine. I said, oh, we're trying to get to these drama schools and how are we going to do it? And they were both like, we'll figure it out, let's just do it. And they have never said no. And I only realised that more recently and was like, I'm so grateful. And even now, a global pandemic comes and I turn up on their doorstep with my suitcase like, please let me back in the spare room.
Full-time stage theatre parents to an extent, haven't they?
The stagey, you know how stagey my parents are, and they never were. The funny thing is they never were that.
Yeah.
Like I say, my dad would take me to Whitesnake concerts at 8 years old and we'd be like headbanging.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of variety, is there? I bet he's desperate for you to get a job in Rock of Ages at some point.
And he's literally like, we will rock you, please.
Yeah, we will rock you.
One day, Dad, I hope so. So yeah, those would be my 3/4.
I'll give you a chance to maybe add to that. Any potential like organisations or groups? There's probably too many to list actually, but any that stand out?
I mean, it has to be the first ones, like St Philip's, where we both started, where I did my first few shows, and Cats as well up north.
Yeah.
And then Francis Bleasdale's, my dance school. They still message me to this day saying, "Do you want to have a Zoom dance call?" And I do. Whenever I'm home, I go back and I try and see as many people because they are my family. And when everything's been going wrong in London or whatever's happened, it's those people that are like, "You can do it."
They're the people that you can always go back to, aren't they?
When we announced that Les Mis was closing, the amount of messages I had from people up north who had booked tickets, who I haven't spoken to in years, but they're just undying support, and it's just wonderful. So those first few organisations, I'm forgetting some, and I do apologise.
So, Becky, I think we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Bearing in mind, we've not spoken for such a long time. This is, I think, the first time we've spoken in years. It's been so nice to hear about what you've been up to, how you're getting on. And I really hope that everything gets back up and running. You can get back on tour. We can all come and see you in Salford at the Lowry for your professional debut in your local area. But thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. This is my first podcast and it's been an absolute joy.
Here's to many more for both of us then. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. What a fantastic guest Rebecca was. This was actually the first recording we did, and the energy that Rebecca brought to the conversation just put me at ease from the moment that we started talking. I really, really hope that we can get to see her on stage again very soon. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and check us out on Instagram and Twitter at startsandgrafts. I really hope you can join me again next week, but until then, take care.